Ambassador Zara Vek stood frozen before the massive holographic display, watching as star system after star system winked out of existence on the galactic map. Not destroyed, simply silent. The steady stream of trade reports, diplomatic messages, and civilian chatter that had flowed like a river across the galaxy for millennia had stopped. "This can't be right," she whispered, her scaled fingers dancing across the control interface. Behind her, the hub's control room buzzed with panicked activity as technicians from a dozen different species frantically checked their equipment. Chief Engineer Kothar, a massive, bear-like creature from the Ursine Collective, lumbered over to her station. His deep voice rumbled with concern. "All diagnostics are green, Ambassador. The silence isn't on our end." Zara's hearts, both of them, hammered in her chest. As a member of the Draconian Diplomatic Corps, she had dealt with countless crises across the galaxy. Wars, plagues, economic collapses, but nothing like this. "Show me the progression pattern," she commanded. The hologram shifted, displaying a time-lapse of the last 6 hours. The silence had started at the galaxy's edge, in the remote Terran system that most civilizations barely acknowledged. Earth, the backwater world that had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. From there, it had spread like a virus. No, not a virus, more like ripples in a pond. "Whatever happened," Kothar observed, "it started with the humans." Before Zara could respond, a new voice cut through the chaos. Cold, mechanical, ancient. "Attention, Galactic Hub Nexus Prime." Every head in the control room turned toward the main communication array. The voice belonged to no species they recognized, yet somehow impossibly, everyone understood it perfectly. "You will maintain silence. You will await instructions. Any attempt at communication beyond your immediate system will result in immediate termination." Zara's blood turned to ice. "Who is this? By what authority do you—" The transmission cut off with a burst of static that made every piece of equipment in the hub shudder. Then, from the depths of space, came something that made every being in the room forget how to breathe. A ship appeared, on their long-range sensors. But calling it a ship was like calling a supernova a candle flame. The vessel stretched across hundreds of kilometers, its hull black as the void between stars, covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and writhe when looked at directly. "By the void," someone whispered. "What is that thing?" Zara's training kicked in. "Get me Admiral Kree of the Defense Fleet now." "I'm trying," the communications officer replied, his voice shaking. "Nothing's getting through. Whatever that signal was, it's blocking everything except local communications." The massive alien ship began to move, and as it did, every star system in its path fell silent on their sensors. "It's heading for the core worlds," Kothar realized. "If it maintains this course, it'll reach the capital systems within days," Zara finished. She turned to face the room, her voice carrying the authority of 1,000 years of diplomatic training. "Send word to every ship in the Nexus system. We need to warn the inner colonies before—" The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in, a moment later, bathing everything in eerie red light. But when the main display flickered back to life, it showed something that made Zara's scales stand on end. The alien ship had disappeared from their sensors entirely, and in its place, drifting, alone in the void, was a small human vessel, a single ship, no larger than a civilian transport, broadcasting on ancient radio frequencies that hadn't been used for centuries. The message was simple, repeated on loop in dozens of languages. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel. JÖRMUNGANDR. If anyone receives this transmission, know that we tried to warn you. We tried to make them understand, but they wouldn't listen. They never listen. God help us all." The transmission cut to static, and across the galaxy, 1 billion civilizations held their breath and waited. Chapter 2. The Captain's Burden, 3 days earlier. Captain Sarah Chen had always hated the silence of deep space. The vast emptiness between stars pressed against the hull of her ship like a living thing, making every creak and groan of the metal seem unnaturally loud. But today the silence felt different, Wrong. Captain, we're receiving something on the old radio bands. Lieutenant Marcus Webb called from the communications station. His young face was creased with confusion. It's weird. Sarah pushed herself up from the captain's chair of the ESV JÖRMUNGANDR, Earth's first and only deep space exploration vessel. The ship was small by galactic standards, barely 100 meters long, but it was humanity's pride and joy. The culmination of decades of rapid technological advancement after first contact with the galactic community. Define weird, Lieutenant. Webb's fingers danced over his console. The signal's coming from beyond the galaxy's edge. Coordinates don't match any known star system. But the strangest part? It's using mathematical progressions we've never seen before. Almost like what? Like someone's trying to teach us a new language. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's xenobiologist and Sarah's oldest friend, looked up from her research station. Her dark eyes sparkled with curiosity. A first contact scenario? Impossible, Chief Engineer Park muttered from his position near the engine controls. The stocky Korean man had been skeptical of the entire mission from the start. We've been part of the galactic community for 20 years. Every sentient species is already cataloged. Sarah studied the data on her personal display. The signal was indeed strange, a complex mathematical sequence that seemed to pulse with an almost organic rhythm. But something about it made her skin crawl. How long has it been broadcasting? That's just it, Captain. According to the signal's embedded timestamp, it's been transmitting for over 50,000 years. The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of life support systems. That's impossible, Park repeated, but his voice had lost its certainty. Sarah made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Set course for the signal's origin point, full speed. Captain, Webb protested, we're already at the edge of explored space. If we go any further, we'll be doing exactly what humanity has always done, Lieutenant. We'll be exploring the unknown. She settled back into her chair. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? The journey took 18 hours at maximum, warp. 18 hours during which the signal grew stronger, more complex, more alive. By the time they dropped out of warp at the coordinates, Dr. Vasquez had filled 3 databases with her analysis. It's definitely a language, she reported, barely containing her excitement. Mathematical at its base, but with linguistic structures unlike anything in our databases. The complexity is, it's beautiful, Sarah, like poetry written in physics. But Sarah wasn't looking at the data. She was staring at the main screen, where the source of the signal had finally revealed itself. Jesus Christ, Park whispered. Floating, in the void before them was a structure that defied every law of physics Sarah knew. It looked organic, like a massive coral reef made of crystalline material that pulsed with its own inner light. But coral reefs didn't grow to be the size of moons, and they certainly didn't exist in the vacuum of space. Life signs? Sarah asked, though her voice came out as barely a whisper. Webb ran his scans twice before answering. None that our equipment can detect. But Captain, the structure is generating its own gravitational field, and the energy readings are off the charts. Off the charts how? Off the charts like it's producing more energy than our sun. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Vasquez, any progress on the translation? Her friend's face had gone pale. I think I'm starting to understand fragments. But Sarah, what I'm seeing doesn't make sense. It seems to be some kind of warning, but not a warning to stay away. Then what? Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. A warning to run. Before Sarah could respond, every system on the bridge lit up with alarms. Webb's hands flew over his controls. Captain, I'm reading massive gravitational distortions throughout the sector and something else. His face went white. I'm detecting ships, Captain. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. From where? That's just it. They're not coming from anywhere. They're just appearing. On the main screen, points of light began to materialize around the alien structure. Ships of impossible size and design, their hulls seeming to bend light around them. As Sarah watched in growing horror, she realized they were arranging themselves in formation. A formation pointed directly at known space. "Get me a channel to Earth," she ordered. "Emergency frequency." "I'm trying, Captain, but something's jamming. Our long-range communications." The alien structure pulsed brighter, and suddenly the mysterious signal changed. What had been mathematical poetry became something else entirely. Something that spoke directly to the primitive parts of their brains, that remembered when humans were prey animals hiding from things with bigger teeth. "The translation program's finished," Elena announced, her voice shaking. "Sarah, you need to read this now." Sarah looked at the screen and felt the universe tilt beneath her feet. "The awakening is complete. The long sleep ends. We remember. Now why we slept. They grow too quickly, spread too far, dream too loudly. The young ones must be silenced before they wake the others. It begins with the newest, the loudest, the humans." "My God," Sarah breathed. "We're not the first contact. We're the target." The alien fleet began to move, and as it did, space itself seemed to scream. Chapter 3. The Ancient Wake. The JÖRMUNGANDR shuddered as gravitational waves from the alien fleet washed over it. Warning lights bathed the bridge in hellish red as systems struggled to compensate for forces that shouldn't exist. "Report!" Sarah shouted over the alarms. "Hull integrity holding but barely," Park called back, sweat beading on his forehead as he fought to keep the engine stable. "Whatever those ships are doing, they're tearing holes in space-time itself." Dr. Vasquez looked up from her station, face pale with realization. "Sarah, I've been analyzing the structure's broadcasts. This isn't just a fleet. It's a civilization, one that's been dormant for millions of years." "Dormant? You mean they were sleeping?" "More than sleeping. They were waiting. And according to these signals, they've been triggered by something specific." Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. "By us. By humanity's expansion into the galaxy." Lieutenant Webb's fingers flew over his communications array. "Captain, I'm picking up transmissions from across the galaxy. The galactic communication networks are going dark, system by system. And there's something else." He paused, listening to something through his earpiece. "I'm hearing fragments of emergency broadcasts from the inner worlds." "What are they saying?" "They're screaming." The main screen flickered, showing the impossible sight of the alien fleet spreading out like a dark tide. Each ship was a monument to technology so advanced it might as well have been magic. Their hulls seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, creating optical illusions that made Sarah's eyes water. "How many ships are we looking at?" she asked. Webb checked his sensors 3 times before answering. "At least 10,000, Captain, but the sensors can't get accurate readings. Some of these vessels are..." He struggled for words. "They're bigger than planets." Park looked up from his engineering station, his face grim. "Captain, we need to leave, now. Our warp core is already showing stress fractures from the gravitational interference. If we stay much longer, we won't be able to jump to warp speed at all." But Sarah couldn't move, couldn't look away from the screen where humanity's doom was unfolding in real time. "Elena, that transmission you translated, was there anything else? Any weakness we could exploit?" Dr. Vasquez scrolled through pages of alien mathematics, her brilliant mind working at light speed. "There's something here about the awakening process. It seems like they don't fully awaken all at once. The process takes time and..." Her eyes widened. "Sarah, I think I know why they targeted us specifically." "Tell me." "It's not because we're the newest species to achieve spaceflight. It's because we're the loudest." Elena's hands shook as she pulled up a galactic map. "Look at this. Our radio transmissions, our subspace communications, even our quantum entanglement experiments. Compared to other species, we've been broadcasting our presence across the galaxy like a supernova. So to them, we're not just another young species. We're the alarm clock that woke them up." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't just discovered the galaxy's greatest threat. They had created it. "Captain," Webb's voice cut through her despair, "I'm detecting a change in the alien formation. They're doing something to space itself." On the screen, the fabric of reality began to warp around the largest ships. Fold lines appeared in the vacuum, creating impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. And through those folds, Sarah could see glimpses of familiar star systems. There, opening gateways, she realized. Direct pathways to inhabited worlds. Not just inhabited worlds, Elena corrected, her voice hollow with horror. I'm reading the navigation data in their transmissions. They're targeting the most populated systems first. Earth is on the list, Sarah, right near the top. Sarah's mind raced. The JÖRMUNGANDR was fast for a human ship, but compared to these ancient vessels, it might as well have been standing still. They couldn't outrun the fleet, couldn't outfight it, couldn't even warn anyone because their communications were being jammed. But maybe. Webb, can you break through the jamming on short-range frequencies? Possibly, Captain, but the range would be extremely limited. Limited to what? Maybe a few light years, enough to reach ships in nearby systems, but not the core worlds. Sarah made another decision that would change everything. Do it. Broadcast everything, our sensor logs, Elena's translations, everything we've discovered. Someone needs to know what's coming. Captain, Park interrupted, the gravitational distortions are getting worse. If we don't leave in the next few minutes, I'm not abandoning the galaxy to die in ignorance. As Webb worked to punch through the alien jamming, Elena continued her analysis of the ancient transmissions. What she found made her blood run cold. Sarah, there's more. The awakening process. It's not just happening here. This is one of dozens of fleets, maybe hundreds. They've been seeded throughout the galaxy, waiting for the right trigger. How many ships total? Elena's voice was barely audible. Millions. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of overtaxed systems. Outside, the alien fleet continued its impossible dance, tearing holes in reality itself. Through those holes, Sarah could see other fleets awakening in distant parts of the galaxy. The scope of what they were facing was beyond imagination. Captain, I've got a partial connection, Webb announced. Short range only, but I can broadcast to about a dozen nearby systems. Do it. Tell them what we found. Tell them. Sarah paused, searching for words that could possibly convey the magnitude of the threat. Tell them to run. As the transmission began, the largest of the alien ships turned toward their position. For a moment that stretched into eternity, Sarah felt as though something vast and ancient was looking directly at her, studying her, judging her. Then space around the JÖRMUNGANDR began to fold. They're trying to trap us, Park shouted. Engaging emergency warp. The ship lurched as its engines fought against gravitational forces that shouldn't exist. For a terrifying moment, Sarah thought they wouldn't make it. The warp field flickered, failed, then suddenly snapped into existence around them. But as they fled into the safety of faster-than-light travel, Sarah realized their escape might have doomed everyone else, because now the ancient fleet knew that someone had seen them awakening, and they would make sure no one else got the chance to warn the galaxy. The hunt for humanity had begun. Chapter 4. The Price of Knowledge. Present day, Nexus Prime, Ambassador. Zaravek stared at the human transmission playing on repeat, each word driving the terrible truth deeper into her consciousness. Around her, the Galactic Communications Hub had descended into barely controlled chaos as representatives from dozens of species tried to make sense of what they were hearing. This can't be real, insisted Counselor Thurak of the Cephalopod Commerce Guild, his tentacles writhing with agitation. An ancient fleet of this magnitude would have been detected by our deep space sensors centuries ago. Would it? Zara asked, quietly. Our sensors are designed to detect known forms of technology. What if these beings use something else entirely? Chief Engineer Kothar pulled up a galactic display showing the pattern of communication blackouts. The silence is spreading, faster now. Whatever happened at the galaxy's edge, it's accelerating. Zara studied the pattern, her trained diplomatic mind working through the implications. Show me Earth's last transmission logs before they went dark. The display shifted, showing the final communications from the human home system. What she saw made her scales stand on end. Dozens of evacuation broadcasts, emergency military deployments, and then nothing. According to this, they had less than 6 hours warning before the silence fell, she observed. 6 hours to evacuate a planet of 12 billion people. Impossible, Thurak protested. No force in the galaxy could subjugate a defended world that quickly. Before Zara could respond, the hub's long-range sensors detected something that made everyone freeze. A single ship was approaching Nexus Prime at impossible speed. Not faster than light travel. Actual movement through normal space at velocities that should have torn any known vessel apart. It's the human ship, Webb's voice called out over the communication array, weak and distorted, but unmistakably real. The JÖRMUNGANDR, we're requesting emergency docking. We have critical information about the threat. Patch me through to them, Zara commanded. A moment later, Captain Sarah Chen's face appeared on the main screen. She looked like she'd aged a decade in the past few days. Her eyes held the haunted look of someone who'd seen the end of everything. Ambassador Vex, I presume, Sarah said without preamble. How much do you know about what's happening? We know. The galaxy is going silent, system by system. We know it started with your people. Beyond that, Zara spread her hands helplessly. Sarah's expression hardened. Then you don't know nearly enough. Permission to dock? We have information that might save what's left of civilization. 20 minutes later, Sarah stood in the hub's main briefing room, facing an emergency assembly of the Galactic Council's regional representatives. Her crew flanked her, Dr. Vasquez with her xenobiological expertise, Lieutenant Webb clutching data crystals containing their findings, and Chief Engineer Park looking like he wanted to be anywhere else in the universe. The entities you're facing aren't invaders, Sarah began without preamble. They're custodians, gardeners if you will, and we're the weeds they've decided to remove. The room erupted in protests and questions, but Zara's voice cut through the chaos. Explain. Elena stepped forward, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. Based on our analysis of their transmissions, these beings have been maintaining the galaxy for millions of years. They guide evolution, prevent species from advancing too quickly, maintain what they consider cosmic balance. And what does that have to do with the current crisis? Asked Counselor Thurak. Every few million years they go into dormancy, Elena continued. Deep sleep, waiting for the next phase of their cycle. But something can wake them early. Something like a species that grows too fast, spreads too far, makes too much noise. The terrible understanding began to dawn on the assembled representatives. Humanity triggered their awakening, Sarah said flatly. Our rapid expansion, our loud communications, our quantum experiments, we set off every alarm they had. And, once awakened, they decided the entire galaxy had become too chaotic to maintain. You're saying they're going to sterilize everything? Zara's voice was barely a whisper. Not sterilize. Reset. They're going to reduce galactic civilization back to a manageable level. Pre-space flight for most species. Complete extinction for others. Webb activated his data crystals, filling the room with holographic displays of the ancient fleet. We've identified at least 40 separate awakening sites across the galaxy. Each one commands thousands of ships. They're not just attacking military targets. They're systematically dismantling the infrastructure that connects our civilizations. The communication networks, the trade routes, the defensive alliances, Park added grimly. They're isolating each system before they strike. Counselor, Thurak's tentacles had gone pale. How do we fight them? You don't, Sarah replied. Their technology is millions of years ahead of ours. Their ships manipulate space and time like we manipulate matter and energy. I've seen them tear holes in reality itself. Then what do you propose? Zara demanded. That we simply surrender. Sarah and Elena exchanged a look. There might be another way, Elena said carefully, but it would require cooperation on a scale the galaxy has never seen before. What kind of cooperation? We need to make them sleep. Again, Sarah explained. According to their own transmissions, the awakening process can be reversed if the triggering conditions are removed. But that would mean what? Sarah's voice was hollow with the weight of what she was about to propose. It would mean voluntarily reducing our technological level. dismantling our fastest-than-light networks, limiting our population growth, essentially becoming the kind of quiet, isolated civilizations they prefer to manage. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "You're asking us to abandon everything we've built," Thurak said finally. "I'm asking you to survive," Sarah replied. "Because the alternative is extinction." But even as she spoke, new alarms began sounding throughout the hub. On the main display, another section of the galaxy winked out of existence. The ancient fleet was accelerating their schedule. "How long do we have?" Zara asked. Webb consulted his instruments, his face grim. "Based on their current rate of advance, maybe days before they reach the core worlds, hours before they get here." Zara felt the weight of decision settling on her shoulders. As the senior diplomatic representative present, the choice would fall to her: save civilization by abandoning everything that made it worth saving, or fight a hopeless war against gods. But before she could speak, new contacts appeared on their sensors. Ships were approaching Nexus Prime from all directions. Not the impossible vessels of the ancient fleet, but familiar designs from across the galaxy. "It's the survivors," Webb realized. "Ships from every system that's gone dark. They're converging on our position." Hundreds of vessels filled the space around Nexus Prime: military ships, civilian transports, research vessels, merchant freighters. The remnants of a dozen civilizations united by desperation and the hope that someone, somewhere had answers. "They're all broadcasting the same message," the communications officer reported. "They want to know what we're going to do." Zara looked at Sarah, seeing her own fear and determination reflected in the human captain's eyes. "What would you do in my position?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "I'd remember that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you're not brave enough to die for nothing." But before Zara could respond, the lights went out again. And this time, when the emergency power activated, the long-range sensors showed something that made everyone's heart stop. The ancient fleet had arrived at Nexus Prime, and they were not alone. Epilogue. The Gardener's Choice, the ancient vessel that materialized in Nexus Prime's orbit, dwarfed everything else in the system. Where the human ship JÖRMUNGANDR was measured in hundreds of meters, this craft stretched across thousands of kilometers. Its hull seemed to exist partially outside normal space, creating visual distortions that made it impossible to look at directly. In the communications hub, Ambassador Zara Vek stood before the main display as a new voice filled the chamber. Unlike the mechanical tones they'd heard before, this voice was organic, ancient, and impossibly sad. "Young species of this galaxy," it began, the words somehow translating perfectly into every language simultaneously. "I am the keeper of this spiral arm. I have awakened from the long sleep to find you have grown beyond the boundaries we set long ago." Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "We didn't know. We didn't understand the rules." "Rules." The voice seemed to consider this. "Perhaps that is the correct word. We have maintained the balance for longer than your species have existed, preventing chaos, preventing the awakening of things that should remain asleep." "What things?" Elena asked, her scientific curiosity overriding her terror. The response came with images, holographic displays of cosmic horrors that existed in the spaces between galaxies. Things that fed on the dreams of sapient species, that grew stronger with each civilization that reached out into space. "The garden of this galaxy must be tended carefully," the keeper continued. "Too much growth too quickly attracts attention from things that hunger for what you have built." Zara felt understanding dawn like a cold sunrise. "You're not conquerors, you're protectors. We are both. We are neither. We are what necessity has made us." The ancient voice carried the weight of eons. "The choice now falls to you, young ones. Submit to necessary limits and continue to grow slowly under our guidance, or maintain your current path and face what lies beyond the galactic edge." On the display, new images appeared, the spaces between galaxies, where things that weren't quite matter and weren't quite energy moved with purpose toward their local group of stars. How long do we have to decide? Sarah asked. The Devourers have already detected your rapid expansion. They approach with hunger. Perhaps decades remain, perhaps less. The communications hub fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Outside, hundreds of ships waited for a decision that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. There is a third option, Elena said suddenly, her voice cutting through the despair. What if we help you fight them? The Keeper's presence seemed to shift, focusing on the human xenobiologist. You would offer aid to those who have threatened your destruction? You said it yourself. You're gardeners, not conquerors. If there's a threat to the garden, shouldn't all its inhabitants help defend it? The young ones are not ready for such a war. Maybe not, Sarah interjected. But we're here, we're willing, and sometimes being ready isn't as important as being brave. The ancient presence contemplated this for what seemed like hours, but was probably only seconds. You would accept limitations on your growth, guidance in your development, sacrifice your independence to join a war that began before your son was born? Zara looked around the room at the representatives of dozens of species, seeing her own determination reflected in their faces. If it means survival, not just ours, but the galaxy's, yes. Then perhaps there is wisdom in youth after all. The Keeper's voice carried what might have been approval. The sleep time ends. The great work begins again. And for the first time in 50 million years, we will not work alone. The ancient ship began to withdraw, but the Keeper's voice remained. Ready your fleets. Prepare your minds. The Devourers come with the next galactic rotation. We have perhaps 30 of your years to prepare. As the presence faded, normal communications began to return across the galaxy. Systems that had gone dark started broadcasting again, carrying news of the choice that had been made and the war that was coming. Sarah looked out at the stars, knowing that humanity had avoided extinction only to face something infinitely worse. But somehow, standing there surrounded by allies from across the galaxy, she felt something she hadn't experienced since first seeing the ancient fleet. Hope. The galaxy had chosen to stand united. And sometimes that was enough. In the depths of space, the Keepers began to wake their slumbering armadas, preparing for a war that would determine whether organic life had a future among the stars. The real test was about to begin. The end.